3 women vanished from a quiet home in Springfield, Missouri, sometime before sunrise on June 7th, 1992. When friends arrived later that morning, they expected to find 2 recent high school graduates getting ready for a trip to a water park. Instead, they found an unlocked front door, 3 cars still parked outside, purses left behind, and a small dog wandering the house in distress. Nothing appeared to have been stolen, yet Sherrill Levitt, her 19-year-old daughter, Suzie Streeter, and Suzie's best friend, Stacy McCall, were gone. To understand how 3 women could simply disappear, we have to go back to the day before June 6, 1992. It was graduation day. Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall had just finished high school. Their graduation ceremony was held at the Hammonds Student Center on the campus of what was then Southwest Missouri State University. Like every other family there, they were celebrating the start of a new chapter. Suzie's mother, Sherrill Levitt, was there too. She was 47 years old and worked as a cosmetologist in Springfield. Friends remembered her as hardworking, kind, and deeply devoted to her daughter. It should have been one of the happiest days of their lives. No one knew it would be the last day all 3 women would ever be seen. For the rest of the afternoon and into the evening, life carried on exactly as you'd expect after a graduation ceremony. Sherrill turned down a dinner invitation from a family friend and stayed home. Stacy celebrated with her family, received a Cocker Spaniel puppy as a graduation gift, and posed for photos beside her cake. Suzie stopped home briefly to take a few pictures with a friend before heading back out. The rest of the night was spent doing what thousands of graduates do every year, driving from one celebration to the next, catching up with friends, taking pictures, and enjoying the excitement of finally being done with school. Around 10 that evening, Stacy called her mother, Janice McCall. The original plan had been to spend the night in Branson before going to Whitewater the following morning. That changed. Instead, the girls decided to return to Springfield and meet everyone the next morning before heading to the water park together. To Janice, it sounded like an ordinary phone call. Nothing about Stacy's voice suggested anything was wrong. It would be the last time she ever heard her daughter speak. At around 11:15 that night, Sherrill got a phone call from a friend. The two talked about refinishing a piece of bedroom furniture. Investigators believe it was the last confirmed conversation anyone had with her. Meanwhile, Suzie and Stacy continued celebrating with friends. Shortly before 2:00 a.m., police broke up one of the graduation parties after receiving Anoy's complaint. Like many of the other graduates, Suzie and Stacy left and headed to the home of their friend, Janelle Kirby, where they had originally planned to spend the night. But when they arrived, they found the house full of relatives who had traveled in for graduation. Rather than disturb everyone, Suzie suggested they spend the night at their house instead. She had recently gotten a new king-sized waterbed and wanted to show it to Stacy. As the 2 girls left, Janelle's mother, only half awake, overheard a brief exchange. "Follow him to my house," Suzie said. "Okay, I will," Stacy replied. Those are believed to be the last words either of them ever spoke to another person. What happened between about 2:15 and 7:30 that morning is the part no one has ever been able to reconstruct with certainty. Everything investigators know about those hours comes from what was left behind. The evidence suggests Suzie and Stacy made it home safely. They removed their makeup. A half-finished can of Coca-Cola sat in Suzie's bedroom beside a pack of cigarettes. On her headboard was a copy of Oh, The Places You'll Go, a graduation gift she'd received just hours earlier. The television had been left on long enough to drift into static. It looked like the end of an ordinary night, until it wasn't. Just before 9 that morning, Janelle Kirby and her boyfriend, Mike Henson, pulled into the driveway expecting to pick up their friends for a day at Whitewater. Instead, they found the front door unlocked. Mike called out. No answer. The house was too quiet. All 3 vehicles were still parked outside. Nothing looked out of place, but there was no sign of Sherrill, Suzie's, Stacy. The only movement came from Cinnamon, the family's Yorkshire Terrier. The little dog ran anxiously through the house, refusing to settle. Friends later said the behavior wasn't normal for her. Of course, no one knows what Cinnamon may have seen that night. But something had clearly disturbed her. Outside, Janelle noticed something else. The glass globe covering the front porch light had been shattered. Oddly, the light bulb itself was still intact. Investigators have never confirmed whether the broken globe was connected to the disappearance. But with so few signs that anything unusual had happened, it immediately stood out. Then came a decision that has haunted this case ever since. Thinking someone might accidentally step on the broken glass, Janelle asked Mike to sweep it up. At the time, it seemed like the responsible thing to do. No one believed they were standing in the middle of what would become one of America's most famous missing persons cases. But once the glass was thrown away, investigators lost the chance to examine it for fingerprints, trace evidence, or clues about how it had been broken. As Janelle and Mike prepared to leave and see if their friends had gone straight to the water park, the house phone rang. Janelle answered. A man on the other end began making obscene sexual comments. She hung up almost immediately. A short time later, the phone rang again. It was another obscene call. Janelle later described the caller as sounding young, almost teenish. Police documented both calls, but they've never been able to identify who made them. Whether they were connected to the disappearance or simply an unfortunate coincidence remains unknown. Later that afternoon, Stacy's mother, Janice McCall, drove to the house herself. She had spent the morning trying to find her daughter. By then, friends had confirmed that neither Stacy nor Suzie had shown up at Whitewater. When Janice stepped inside, Cinnamon rushed toward her. The dog still wouldn't settle. As she searched the house, more pieces of the puzzle began to appear. All 3 women's purses were still there. Inside, Sherrill's purse was nearly $900 in cash from the salon. Nothing suggested the women had packed up and left on their own. In Stacy's room, the clothes she'd worn the night before had been neatly folded. But investigators noticed something unusual. Her shirt and underwear from that night were missing. Everything else was exactly where it should have been. Janice used the house phone to call police. That's when she discovered something investigators have wished they could hear ever since. There was a message waiting on the answering machine. She pressed play, but whatever was recorded was heard only once. Because of the way many answering machines worked in 1992, the message was erased during playback before investigators had the chance to preserve it. Police later said they considered that message important. They also said they did not believe it was connected to the obscene phone calls Janelle had received earlier that morning. Exactly what the caller said has never been known publicly. By the time officers secured the home, another problem had already complicated the investigation. Friends, relatives, neighbors. People had come and gone throughout the morning, unaware they were walking through what would soon become a crime scene. Investigators later estimated that somewhere between 10 and 20 people entered the property before it was secured. Ashtrays had been emptied, coffee cups had been washed, and potential evidence had almost certainly been disturbed. More than 16 hours had passed since anyone could confidently place the women alive. From that point on, detectives were trying to solve a mystery with crucial pieces already missing. So where did the investigation lead? Over the years, detectives followed thousands of tips, with some quickly rules out, while others stayed alive for years, with several names surfacing repeatedly, but none led to charges. One of the first was Dustin Reckla, Suzie's former boyfriend. Months before the disappearance, Reckla had taken part in the burglary of a Springfield mausoleum, where gold fillings were removed from a skull. Suzie had given a statement to police about that case, and was believed to be a potential witness if it went to trial. That raised an obvious question. Did someone want to silence her? Reckla later denied any involvement before a grand jury, and despite years of investigation, authorities haven't ever found physical evidence linking him to the disappearance. Another name has followed this case for decades: Larry Dwayne Hall. Hall traveled extensively across the Midwest as a civil war enactor and has been linked by investigators to numerous violent crimes involving young women. The timing caught investigators' attention. Civil War reenactments were taking place near Springfield. On the same weekend the women disappeared, placing Hallen an area he was known to visit. Years later, former undercover operative Jimmy Keenset Hall discussed violent crimes in disturbing detail and showed him what appeared to be a map, marking locations connected to victims before quickly hiding it. The story has fueled years of speculation, but speculation isn't evidence. To this day, investigators have never publicly identified evidence placing Hall inside the house on Delmar Street. Then there was Robert Craig Cox. By the late 1990s, Cox was serving time in Texas for unrelated crimes when he claimed he knew the 3 women had been murdered and that their bodies would never be found. Cox had been living in Springfield in 1992. When police first questioned him, his girlfriend supported his alibi. Years later, she admitted she had lied for him. Even so, investigators have repeatedly said they do not consider Cox a credible witness, believing many of his claims were attempts to draw attention rather than admissions of guilt. Other convicted offenders also came under scrutiny. Among them were Gerald Carnahan and Stephen Garrison, both of whom were connected to separate violent crimes. Police have acknowledged receiving information related to the pair, but they have never revealed exactly what that information was. Whether either man knew anything about the disappearance remains unknown. Investigators did continue to chase leads, and one of the most talked about came years later, though it didn't point to a suspect. It pointed to a parking garage. A tip claimed the women had been buried beneath what became the South Parking Garage at Cox Hospital. In 2007, ground-penetrating radar detected several underground anomalies that some believed could be burial sites. For a moment, it looked like investigators might finally have a breakthrough. But police weren't convinced. The original tip wasn't supported by evidence, and later reporting suggests it may have originated from a psychic claim rather than first-hand information. No excavation was ever carried out. The lead quietly faded away, joining the long list of theories that have never been proven. More than 3 decades have passed since Sherrill Levitt, Suzie Streeter, and Stacy McCall disappeared. Investigators from the Springfield Police Department, the FBI, and the Missouri State Highway Patrol have followed thousands of leads. They've interviewed witnesses, re-examined evidence, chased tips from across the country, yet the case remains exactly where it began, unsolved. In 1997, Sherrill and Suzie were legally declared dead. It was a legal step for their families, and not as a result of a solved investigation. Today, a memorial bench in Springfield's Victims Memorial Garden stands in their honor. It's a quiet reminder that while decades have passed, the questions haven't. So, what do investigators believe happened? The truth is, they've never been able to prove a single theory. Some believe the women were targeted by someone they knew. Others think whoever was responsible simply found an opportunity that night and took it. Then there's the possibility that the person behind the crime has appeared in the investigation all along. But there has never been enough evidence to prove it. Every theory seems to answer one question, while creating another. If this was planned, why was there so little evidence? If it was random, why that house? How could 3 women disappear from a quiet neighborhood without waking anyone nearby? And perhaps the biggest question of all, if someone was indeed responsible, how have they managed to stay silent for more than 30 years? That's what makes this case different. It's not just that 3 women disappeared, but that almost everything they needed to live their everyday lives was left behind. Cars, purses, money, keys, even the family dog. It was as if whoever left that house before sunrise expected to come back. But they never did. None of the theories proposed has answered the one question that has haunted investigators since the morning of June 7, 1992. What happened inside that house? Somewhere, someone almost certainly knows the answer. And maybe they've never spoken because they were afraid, or perhaps loyalty kept them silent. Or just maybe they've convinced themselves that after all these years, the truth no longer matters. But it does matter to the families who never got answers, to the investigators who never stopped trying to solve the case. And it certainly matters because, until the truth is known, 3 women who should have grown older, celebrated birthdays, watched their families grow, and lived full lives remain frozen in time. The house on East Delmar Street is still standing. The silence surrounding it is still just as heavy, and one of America's most enduring missing persons cases remains exactly that, an unanswered question. If you have your own thoughts about what happened that night, let us know in the comments. As always, keep the discussion respectful and grounded in the known facts, because after more than 30 years, that's still where this story ends. Not with answers, but with hope that one day someone finally tells the truth.